When I think of Black mental wealth, I think of acknowledgement first, like being educated in certain dynamics or people or places or things that uh, have harmed you environmentally, but personally. I think about taking agency over your narrative and the way you choose to share that.
Welcome to Shaping Freedom with Lisan Basquiat, the podcast where we help you unlock your potential and redefine what it means to be free. I'm your host, Lisan Basquiat. I'm a former corporate executive, a life strategist, and the founder of Shaping Freedom. With a background spanning corporate, artistic, and personal development, I bring a unique perspective to empowering others. Listen in to discover inspiring stories and practical insights that will help you reclaim your life and rewrite your narrative. My intention is for you to gain the tools and motivation to be free in your relationships, your communities, and within yourself. This, my friends, is Shaping Freedom.
Today, I have the immense pleasure of speaking with Dr. Raquel Martin. She is a licensed clinical psychologist, a professor at Tennessee State University, a podcast host, and a self-identified liberation psychologist. Dr. Martin's work extends far beyond academia. Her powerful and open belief in the power of Black mental wealth naturally draws people to her unparalleled work. What I appreciate most about her is her authenticity and her passion. She's created a true movement and has a no-holds-barred way of contributing to the discourse around mental health within the Black community. In this episode, Dr. Martin guides us through imposter syndrome. We talked about relationship values and identifying and establishing boundaries. We also talked about what it means to be culturally appropriating versus appreciating, and the vital need for diverse representation in media. Here's my conversation with Dr. Raquel Martin. I've been following you for quite some time, and you always have just a word, just an incredible word that seems to hit at the right moment. And what I really appreciate about you as a teacher is the fact that you just give it to people real.
Oh yeah, thank you. I always appreciate when individuals appreciate the content. Unless I'm doing something very specific like a skit, most of the time, whether it's from students or during sessions with my patients, or honestly doing a literature review, I just look at something and I'm like, huh, that's interesting. I wonder if other people have this information in their head, or if it's possible to just like hit record very quickly. I don't think about it as much as honestly just um, when you're in so many realms doing it. Like I see patients every week. I teach 4 classes. I am conducting research. I think a lot of us aren't aware of the wealth of knowledge that we have, and when social media is done right, the people that it can reach. Because I will always reach way more people on an Instagram video or a LinkedIn video or a TikTok video, surpassing my caseload that I deal with every week or the number of students I see. So I think more people should use social media as effectively, because therapy shouldn't be a privilege. It very much is, but I don't feel as though therapy is the only way for you to heal. I think if you take an appropriate education from credentialed individuals who also make some sense, because just because you're credentialed doesn't mean you make some sense. And it's in a way that centers your narrative, you can make a lot of progress. And I think a lot of times with mental health, it's not focused on Black individuals. It's typically more general, and I don't find that to be really helpful. I think there's a difference between depression and depression as a result of racial battle fatigue. There's a difference between anxiety and PTSD, or anxiety and PTSD as a result of the rampant police brutality. So when people do stuff more general, I'm like, I don't think that's how I would go across that if I was dealing with a Black patient. I actually think I would get more in the weeds about the historical context of what contributes to that and stereotypes, and then we get to the issue. But I find that a lot of times when I'm looking at platforms, it's more general, which I get, because a lot of times individuals want to be applicable to everyone. But I always state my goal is not to be applicable to everyone. My goal is to center the Black experience with my content, with my platform, with everything. And that's not going to help everybody, but it is going to help my main population of interest, which is people of African descent. So I think that's where people have difficulty specializing. I don't have a goal of reaching everyone. I have a great resource list so that if you have any specifics, I can refer you out. But this is a place where we center the Black voice, and that's okay.
That is what resonates with so many of us who follow you. I mean, I know even the way that you broke down recently in a skit, imposter syndrome.
Oh, with a whiteboard.
Yeah, with the whiteboard and the two characters that were both you, and I really appreciated that because it was a different way of looking at something because and it really was about actually, why don't you share just if you remember, I'm sure you remember, just a little bit about your take on imposter syndrome.
Well, so I think in therapy sometimes a lot of people get fixated on what I identify as branch work instead of root work. And it's the aspect of I believe imposter syndrome exists. However, I think that a lot of times people are going at it according to branches, and the way that they're working with the patients isn't very helpful. Like, if the branch is imposter syndrome, but you identify symptoms of, I would ask questions about how often do you feel like you do not have the expertise? Have you noticed a difference in the environments? Have you notice a difference in the times of day? How often does it happen? And then if I look at an environmental difference, for example, I had a patient who went from an HBCU to a PWI for med school, and then all of a sudden they didn't feel qualified to do anything. And I was like, that's interesting because just looking at what you've shared, you seem like quite a powerhouse. What do you see as the difference? And when there's the notable difference in your environment and the demographics of individuals around you, and you feel more tokenized and you feel like you have to portray this model minority, that's feeling like an imposter. That's feeling like your qualifications aren't worthy. But it's not solely due to what's actually internal. It has to deal with the systemic aspects of racism and oppression and that aspect of it, or attachment. Like if you are in a different environment and you may feel like you don't belong, but it could be because you have significant anxiety and your anxiety is rooted in a recent transition or in trauma. These are all going to be dealing with the same symptoms. They're all I don't feel like I belong. I don't feel like my qualities are appropriate. I'm constantly questioning myself. I'm worried I'm going to get found out. Like a lot of times when I'm talking about imposter syndrome, the title of my presentation is I feel like I'm in the wrong room. Like, 'cause that's what it feels like. And you'll have multiple patients, but if you're just looking at the symptoms and not the root of it, it's not going to help. If we're doing the root of imposter syndrome is based off of racism related stress or racial battle fatigue, we're going to do some aspect of historical context regarding where stereotypes come from. The fact that this is not in your head, you have overtly or covertly been told that you're not enough, and how do we deal with that? How do we incorporate some aspect of Black identity development or education? If you're doing it from the realm of anxiety or attachment, we're going to look at when it was the last time you didn't feel anxious. What do you need in that environment to feel more comfortable? Have you noticed that there are certain things within this environment that they're antithetical to what make you feel more comfortable to be confident in your abilities, right? So the symptoms are similar. The diagnosis may be similar, but your mental health is always going to be a fingerprint. And I find that when patients are coming to me, if they worked with previous individuals or if they've done some research themselves, they're focusing on the branches, and the root is still getting fed. If you are dealing with it as a result of racism related stress and you haven't been mindful of the media you take in or the messaging around you that makes you feel as though you don't belong not only in your work environment but in this world, if you're consistently ingesting that, um, the symptoms aren't going to decrease. You also have to change your environment. If you're not you're dealing with it as a result of anxiety and you haven't acknowledged that, well, the one thing about this environment that makes me feel more of an imposter is I'm often rushed and I don't feel confident in sharing that. And I know that I have anxiety and I know that I need more time to process things. I also don't like coming into the work environment. Those things would have to change before I can even feel like welcome in my own skin. So I feel like a lot of times people are doing worksheets and looking at the symptoms, and I'm going to attack this symptom and this symptom. And it's like branch work has its role too, because a lot of times you need to just get to where you need to be, and then you can focus on, okay, well, now we can deal with attachment. Sometimes I just need to be able to get into the room. And when I get into the room, we can deal with that. But Some people need to go delve deeper and take the slower process. So difference between, looking at solution focused therapy, and taking what I call the scenic route, which I do a lot of my content too, is like, I can tell you all about this. We are going to take the scenic route because I want you to fully embed yourself in this education. But I definitely believe it exists. I just think that individuals have a mindset. I think social media has something to do with this, but individuals have a mindset that is one size fits all. Um, and because your symptoms can be the same, your diagnosis can be the same, but your treatment plan is Black identity development and cultural events, and your treatment plan is having a conversation about working more from home, being more strict on your boundaries with deadlines, and possibly coming up with an extra strategy because this work makes you feel like an imposter, not because of your skills, but because their work ethic does not align with your values.
Right. And sometimes it's both.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's definitely both.
Sometimes it's all of the things, And I think also you mentioned social media, and I think social media, again, is a reflection of how you set your world up around yourself. So if you're putting yourself in situations or following people or scrolling through scenarios that make you feel less than who you really are, then there's some responsibility and accountability that a person has to take on to ensure that they are keeping themselves in a space that feels loving and helpful and that's filling you up versus stripping you away from the person that you know that you are.
Yeah, I tell a lot of people to do, I don't specifically state a detox, but uh, be a little bit more cognizant of your body and your facial expressions and things like that after being on certain content or certain pages. I used to have this one page that every time I looked at it, I would just be like frowning and be like, I just do not like this. And then I thought, like, why am I following it? Right? Like, like there's no need to follow. I would just notice that afterwards, my face just looked like my eyebrows were all the way down to my nose. And I'm like, well, then unfollow it, right? Like, you don't have to announce that you're unfollowing, because I think that's people get confused. Like, we are not in an airport. You do not need to announce your departure, honey. I didn't need to know that.
That's a whole other thing. I am leaving for 2 weeks to
Yeah.
blah, blah, blah. Yeah.
Just being like, oh, well, I used to like your content, but I decided to unfollow. Oh, okay. Thank you. I don't know what you want me to do with that, but just looking at stuff like that, I typically try to look at stuff that like brings me joy. My work, centering the Black experience and working with Black mental health and Black disparities and anti-racism, it gets pretty heavy pretty quickly. So I'm also very mindful of how much of that information I take in. I always state, I'm not going to read like Stamped from the Beginning and then 1619, and then Post Traumatic Slavery Syndrome. No, I'm gonna break it up a little bit with some Nnedi Okorafor. I just got the new Intozaki Shank. Like, I'm gonna break it up. So I'm also trying to be. It's not even just like the social media. It's all of this stuff you ingest. Like, everything is what we're ingesting. We're taking in so many things. So like, look at your TV shows and look at even the music you listen to. I have, it's called hype music for a reason. If I'm going into some form of remediation or something like that, I am not about to be listening to DMX. I need to take a minute. Like, I was just like, this is not the right playlist to discuss mindfulness. I need
Right.
to, so
Right.
I try to be very good at setting up my environment, but being aware. I think some people think, oh, it's just one thing, but it's everything. The music, what puts me in the right mood and the right mindset, and just looking at that with social media. Because even if you're looking at certain content, you can always say not interested. I'm never going to tell you not to get on social media. I'm just going to say, just be aware of everything that you're ingesting. What you're ingesting is not just your food. It's who you're around. Do people around you align with your values? Have you even identified your values to know that this person does not align, and that's why there's conflict? Like, just slowing it down a bit.
Exactly. All relationships.
All
relationships that run into something
Yeah.
are typically about a values misalignment. What is this world that we're creating around ourselves? And I think that that's the thing about your message that resonates so much with me, which is that we're here, as far as I know, like, this is it. And so what you want during this lifetime, it's up to each one of us to create what we want for our family legacy, what we want for the kind of work we do, the way that we want to feel. Those are things that are within our control. Those are things that, if we're willing to take some accountability for the ways that we are living in here, our emotional and mental health, we have an incredible amount of power and ability to live a life that's in better alignment with who we truly are.
Yeah, I think it's the aspect of identifying values and then also boundaries, right? One of the things is I feel like people identify boundaries incorrectly a lot. Like boundaries guide your behavior and rules guide someone else's. You only have control over you.
Hmm.
So a lot of times I would see these articles about like what to do when so and so violates your boundaries. And I'm like, well, that's not possible because the only person who can violate your boundaries is you. An appropriate article would be questions to ask yourself when you have violated your boundaries so it doesn't happen again. Because it happens, right? But what got in the way of you violating that boundary? Was it the relationship with the person? It was your mom or your dad, and you don't feel comfortable standing up to that? Was it the fact that you were so exhausted and you wanted the conversation to end, so you just agreed to whatever to get them out of your face? Well, we need to be mindful of how we're feeling in our body before we have these conversations. Was it the fact that you keep moving your boundary back and forth so you don't even know where your boundary is? You know, so I think that's the issue. People will state that like, "Oh, I'm setting up boundaries and they violated my boundary." But it's like, well, they violated a rule that you set. And I'm not saying that rules don't have their role as well, but if someone violates a rule that you set or they set or that you've agreed upon, they can violate that rule, but your boundary can still stay firm because it's what you set up, right? So I think that's an issue. And then also just the living a value driven life, like identifying what your values are. And I see this come up in relationships a lot because I identify what my values are individually. I also identify what my husband and I have talked about what our values are as a family. And when it comes out as parenting, one of the exercises I sometimes tell family members to do is like we'll do a value identification exercise. We'll talk about what's important to you, not as important to you, what you're interested in, what you're not. And then they come up with family values. And they even if they come up with like a family crest and stuff like that, it's very much like a unifying experience. And if they decide to be like, okay, this is what we're going to identify with, as long as it aligns with your values and it's not incredibly inconvenient, I find that it also makes decision making a lot easier. Like, oh, well, I'm having a disagreement with my son because he said he wanted to dye his hair green, and like that is absurd. And I'm like, okay, well, what what does that violate for you or for your family boundary wise? And it's like, well, I just don't like it. And I'm like, oh, okay. Well, that's not really a value, right? Is it incredibly inconvenient? No. I'm like, okay. Are you all right with acknowledging the fact that no, you don't like green hair? And it also doesn't impact you in any specific way other than the fact that you don't want to get looks at church. Well, then I kind of think that the green hair is coming. I think the green hair is going to stay. Like it's just identifying your values and things like that. It's not just about you, it's about the people you keep around you. Because how are you supposed to live to that?
And so we're here learning how to dance with other people, and sometimes those other people are your children or your partner or your spouse or your friend or whomever that person is, but we're
Mhm.
really here learning how to dance with other people.
And fostering that, like toddlers, their value is autonomy. That's why they want to do everything themselves. Their agenda is never going to be the same as yours. Getting used to that, and then their value is going to be fun. I think so many people are like, I just love being around children. There's nothing like them, and I'm always just like, yeah. You ever think about when did we stop being like that? Because the thing that we love about being around children so much is just like their freedoms. They haven't learned all of those specific social rules. So if something irritates them, they're like, I don't like that. Even if it's like, I don't like this food that you just made, it is atrocious. They're like, you're like, well, that's rude, but it's the truth. So I don't know what to give me something else. I didn't ask for this, like I think I'm like, whenever people talk about the things that they really like about children, their joy, their freedom, their reckless abandon. And I'm like, why? Who decided that we had to stop doing this? Like, who decided? I'm like, what if we could love that about ourselves?
Exactly.
I always find that's what they just have so much joy. And I'm like, yeah, how about we work on getting some more joy for you? Because we should all have joy.
Do you know that we have a line of Shaping Freedom wellness products? Each are beautifully crafted and designed to support you in cherishing your mind, body, emotions, and soul. Carve out a sanctuary in your life with our Lux sustainable yoga and meditation mats, essential oil candles, and more. Embrace self care and reflection with every item, lovingly created to enhance your daily practice of spending time on you. Elevate your wellness journey with Shaping Sanctuary Collection because you deserve to feel balanced, nurtured, and inspired. Visit shapingsanctuary.com for more information.
Values, boundaries, and expression are three of the things that that are very interesting to me and things that I talk about quite a bit. And for me, it's really all about how those things feed into the ways that we spread and share within our family legacy, like what we're passing on. So for someone who's wanting to understand what their values are, do you have a how for them? Like how does one do that? For someone who's listening, for someone who's like, I keep hearing this thing about values, but I don't really know what that means or how to identify mine. Can you do like a 3 or 5 stepper on how someone can do that?
Oh yeah, definitely. So one, if you're into, I have a laminate. I don't know which one I love more now, my printer or my laminator. Because I love them. Y'all, I love y'all. They are my girls. So it depends. So if you want to get a little artsy with it, there's online, if you Google like value card sort, it was this whole like document created by a psychologist. And it just has, no, I think that, I know they're a licensed mental health professional. I don't know if they're psychologists. Um, but it has a whole list of values. And I typically go through the card sort with my patients. If they're younger kiddos, I always incorporate art. So I'm not boring them to tears. So I let them color them and then I'll laminate them. And it has things like integrity and creativity. It has things like money and accolades and wealth, stuff like that. Like just being honest about like, no, my goal is not to like work a lot. My goal is to accumulate a lot of money. And I'm going to do whatever allows me to do that, which some people may be like, oh my gosh, but some people will be like, well, that makes sense. Okay.
But isn't that important?
It's important to know.
Because you're in a relationship with someone and your value is wealth, is financial wealth, and their value is not that. And so it's important to know who you are so that you can ensure that you create a world with people where there's some resonance with the people that are around you. That's so important.
And you don't feel the need to justify it because it's like, well, why would you make this decision? It's like, well, I made this decision because it was giving me more money. And I've already talked about that's something that I'm looking for. Like I'm not going to, it also helps the person around you to be like, well, yeah, that's on brand, is it not? I mean, because that's what values are. I mean, that's on brand, is it not?
Exactly.
They wanted this. I'm not paying for it. They want this huge thing. I'm not doing that. So who else is going to do it, right? I typically say ask questions. I always say be the Inspector Gadget of you. I'm getting older though, because Inspector Gadget, half of these kiddos don't know who that is.
People are like, what? Who's that? We have to find who the new one is. I don't know who the new one is. When I had
this one patient, I was like, have you ever seen Perot? Yes. I'm like, okay, yeah. It's like Perot.
I don't know who that is. Now
really?
I have to go figure that out.
Old school PBS. That's old school PBS. We didn't have cable growing up. So.
No.
Yes. It's like, but ask questions such as, when you've had positive experiences and negative experiences, have you noticed any certain themes? I also find one of the easier ways, and it's because sometimes we think about our relationships more with others than ourselves. Are there individuals that you know, friends, family, celebrities that you admire? What is it about them that you admire? Is it about the way that they hold themselves accountable? Accountability. Is it the way that they have never really changed? Are there people that you're just like, I was cool in this person, I like this person, I don't like them anymore? Was there a violation? And what did that bring up for you? Right. I also state, like, when are you feel like most at peace or most calm? What are some times where you enjoy things? And and we'll identify themes together. such as some people feel at most at peace when there's a million people in their house. Like music is blaring, kids are running up and down the stairs and stuff like that. And feeling like they are grounded with a lot of people around them. The thing that they may value more than anything, I joke and I say chaos, but also community, baby, and being able to share with others. Other people go on silent retreats and feel more themselves when they are alone and don't have to talk. And they may value that kind of isolation and not being lonely, but being alone at times, right? And then also some people value like specific aesthetic things, which is really good to know in relationships. I've seen individuals value aesthetic more than others, and it's like, well, they dressed like that. I don't care. We're we're going to the movies. I don't care. And that's what the argument was about. And it's just like, well, you have to, I mean, you value one thing, the other person values the other. Is that a joint value? No. Is it enough to break you up? No. Well, suck it up. Let them wear the sweats. Let her wear the sweats. Cause it's not always, it's not always the woman being like, dress up. It's some like, well, we were going out to see my friends. I just wanted a little razzle dazzle, and stuff like, so so I ask questions such as that and encourage just taking time to reflect. This is why therapy can very, very much be helpful. I think we all deserve therapy. There are so many individuals who throw out therapy like a weapon. But we deserve therapy. We deserve someone being on your team to help you slow down, because these are exercises that very much require you to slow down, like sit and think about it. And no, don't see this as like I'm wasting time. While I'm thinking about this, I could have thrown something in the laundry. No, I want you to just sit with this and think about, when's the last time you experienced rest or joy? I think sometimes it can be scary for individuals because one of my typical questions I ask individuals when it comes to identifying values together, if we're working collaboratively, they're like, who are you? What do you tell me about yourself? And if I notice that they only use words that connect them to others, like, oh, I'm a wife and I'm a mother and I'm an excellent employee and stuff like that. And I'm like, okay, well, you've told me all about how you are when it comes to relationships with others. And I think that's amazing. Relationships are clearly important for you. Can you tell me more about like who you are? Like, what do you like to do when you have 10 minutes of peace or joy? And it could be scary identifying the fact that you haven't thought in a while, you haven't had the ability to think about how you have evolved over years, things that you used to enjoy that you don't enjoy anymore, or new things that you want to take on, or even thinking about the fact that you don't know because you have so many people pulling at you at every single second of the day. You never have time to see if you even like reading anymore, or if you prefer audibles, or if your taste in food or clothes or anything has changed because someone always needs you. And I think that freaks a lot of people out because it's just like, I don't know myself. And then I'm just like, most of us don't. There's so much stuff people want from us. There's nothing wrong. Let's figure it out. Like, let's think about like 10 minutes. Let's think about hobbies, and not hobbies that you have to monetize, not hobbies that you feel as though, you have to get something out of, just to be like, oh, I've always wanted to try it. Cool. Homework. That's your homework. That's it. There's always this pressure, especially with Black people who, rest is never a thing, feeling like I can do this and then maybe I can sell it. No, it's kind of the impact of being a child and only being praised off of the end result and not the effort that was put in. Like, oh, you got an A on that. That was fantastic. Instead of, oh, I saw how hard you were working. I see that you improved. You got some more questions,
Right.
right? Because I'm not gonna, I'm not about to tell you perfect at everything. You're not gonna be good at everything. But should that take away the joy out of it? I love bowling. My bowling ball in the gutter, best friends the whole game. I'm terrible at it. I mean, I don't think anyone could be worse at bowling than me. My son hits more
Ooh,
pins than me, honey. And I still have a great time. What if I just stop bowling because I'm not going to be good at it? Right? What
it's
if I
the
was brought up
journey.
in, it's the
Yeah.
journey. My mom always said, like, I'm not, get an A, get a B, try your best. And if we did, pour on something, she said, was that your best? Was the C your best? And I'd be like, it was. That was a hard C. Okay. But then she's like, was that C your best? And I'm like, it was not. There was a party I wanted to go to and I just knocked this out, right? It's about just trying your best and also acknowledging that your best doesn't always have to be 100%. or 110%.
Yeah.
Because if I have 100%, even if I barely have 100, if I have 80, do you think I'm giving all 80 to you? No, no. I'm going to give you 50, and that's my best. I'm going to save some reserve for me. And it comes up with parenting too, because for the longest after having my second, I would just have issues with maintaining my boundaries. I just kept moving them back. Um, and the issue was children are going to take, they're designed to take, it's developmentally appropriate. How else are they going to survive? But it's up to me to decide what I'm offering. And I would offer so much, and they'd be surprised when they walked away with handfuls of my energy when I gave it to them. It just being like, I have to stop putting all this on the plate. This is what the issue is. Like, children are designed to take. They're supposed to. But I needed to realize that I kept pushing my boundaries like back. They were just very malleable. And I would just be like, oh, I know I said I didn't want to do this, but they whined, so I'm going to do it. Oh, okay. That sounds absurd. So you're going to be upset when you violate your own boundaries and say you could have just said they whined. So I decided to go upstairs so I couldn't hear it. Yeah. Shut the door, turn on the machine because they were tripping.
Hera Hub Carlsbad is a co-working space and member community designed to empower entrepreneurs. More than just a workspace, Hera Hub Carlsbad is a business accelerator and a connected network of successful entrepreneurs. Imagine a collaborative, serene, and spa-inspired environment where you can thrive. Our unique community allows each member to be both a guide and a student, fostering leadership and continuous growth for both you and your business. Experience an uplifting, supportive atmosphere that will elevate your entrepreneurial journey. For more information about Hera Hub Carlsbad or to schedule a tour, visit herahub.com/Carlsbad. We also have locations in Temecula, Irvine, Washington, D.C., and Hera Hub Carlsbad is one of 3 Hera Hub locations in San Diego, the others being in Mission Valley and La Jolla.
I want to know a little bit, and I know other folks do too. I want to know a little bit about you. Can I ask you a couple of questions?
Yeah.
Okay. I want to know how, so you have a very specific thing that you're doing, a very specific type of work that you're doing. You have a very specific demographic. What is that about? Where did it come from? First of all, what led to you wanting to support people in through therapy? And also, why the focus on race and the Black experience and Black, and then if you can weave in there what Black mental wealth means to you. That's like a loaded up question, 50 questions, but I think you got it.
Oh no, that's cool. Those are my favorite ones. Yeah. So I'm from Philly. I'm from North Philly. To be specific, I grew up around Black people. My family, blackety black. And I think a lot of people grow up around Black individuals and aren't always steeped in the aspect of not only Black history, but emboldening you when it comes to Black futures, providing an emphasis on intellect and knowing about your community and contributing to your community. My family, in their own ways, were always, whether overtly or covertly, talking about contributing to your community and being agents of change. I don't think there was any realm where I didn't think I was going to be doing something to contribute to my community, like the Black community. I always say I wouldn't have become a psychologist if I didn't take my first real psych class at an HBCU. I went to Fisk University, go Bulldogs, in Nashville. And it was one of the few classes that didn't bore me. The only classes that did not bore me were my Africana studies classes and psychology. Everything else, I was like, listen, this is a waste of, honey, I am bored out of my mind. All I care about is there going to be music on the yard tonight? I do not care about this. But those classes actually were interesting to me. And we, in psychology, we learned we didn't really focus on like the European American men that are seen as just doing everything with psychology, like Freud and Jung. We learned about Kenneth and Mamie Phipps Clark and Dr. Robert Williams and Dr. Jawaza Kunjufu. And we learned about the integrations of policy and mental health to advocate for the Black community. We learned about how the doll study was integral in Brown versus Board of Education. We learned about how Dr. Williams' test on intellectual IQ tests and their biases contributed to, there was this court case in the NAACP in San Francisco in the 1970s. And it talked about how they were using standardized IQ testing to put Black children in special education courses. And his research was integral and being like, so let me tell you why this isn't right, right? Like learning about the fact that psychology and mental health is not, it's just not just therapy, it's advocacy, it's policy and research, and how that can contribute to my community. And I've always wanted to focus on Black people because I love Black people. He, she, they. Like that's what I've always grew up around. So it's like, well, of course, whatever I do is going to be about Black people. And I actually find that most people with African descent choose their roles, their jobs to be agents of change in their own way. I think sometimes the view on what activism is can be a little myopic. Because when I talk to my students about womanism and activism, and I'm like, tell me some music artists, and they'll be like Nina Simone, and I'm like, yep, and Megan Thee Stallion. They're like, no, that's not right. And I'm like, well, let's get to the weeds of what this actually is, because sometimes we get so bogged down on individuals that we forget about the framework that they're working in. I feel the same way about activism. If you're going to be an agent of change in your community, is that going to be being represented appropriately in your job, feeling comfortable in your job? Is that going to be, it could be working a job you don't like to be able to have enough money to donate to an organization you do enjoy. I do it through social media and with my training to make sure I'm able to pour into Black people to be a representation of what you can do through therapy, but also through just being like, you can talk it, you can be upset. This is normal. It's okay to feel like something was incorrect. It's okay to advocate for yourself. It's okay to acknowledge the fact that a lot of harm was caused in the community. Your parents tried their best and it wasn't enough. And a lot of us need to realize that that's not solely a parent issue, it's a systemic issue, and addressing your hurt with that. And realizing that activism is thriving in a world that never even expected you to survive, So I find that most Black people, when you get down to the weeds of their jobs, when they're trying to be seen and heard, when they feel like they have messages that need to be shared, they're trying to be agents of change for their community too. I think more people are activists than they recall. I think they're just thinking, oh, well, I didn't do sit outs or wasn't on the bus. And I'm just like, well, that's not the only activism should be an agent of change. If you read Cicely Tyson's book in the first, that's like the first couple of pages, she shares the fact that she's like, I never really thought I was gonna be that person who does like the rallies and the sit-ins. But what I did know was that through my craft, I was going to be an appropriate representation of the wide range of the Black community. I wasn't going to show like a monolithic experience. I was going to hone my craft and be good at my job, be an amazing representation of what Black people can be, are, and do every single day. And that's activism, right? So I just got into it to just be like, I'm gonna help Black people. Like it really just as simple as like, I get asked that all the time. Oh, what made you decide to do mental health? Oh, I wanted to help Black people.
Clarity. Clarity.
I said that to my students and they chuckled. And I said, what? Did I say something weird? Because you never know with this generation. And they were like, no, I just think they're not used to that level of directness. And I'm like, oh, okay, I guess.
I want you to talk a little bit about the concept of Black mental wealth. What does that mean?
When I think of Black mental wealth, I think of acknowledgement first, like being educated in certain dynamics or people or places or things that have harmed you environmentally, but personally. I think about taking agency over your narrative and the way you choose to share that, right? Like what feels comfortable with you. I think about cultural display rules and the fact that a lot of like the Black community has been taught verbally, non-verbally, via propaganda and everything, that our emotions and feelings are never safe to express. So I think about the safety of being able to experience and share the range of emotions, being able to acknowledge like feeling sad or depressed or feeling joyful or happy and ecstatic, because it's not just what people I deem as like negative emotion, because emotions aren't good or bad. It's also like positive emotion. Sometimes it's dangerous to be like too happy. What are they so happy for? What do I need to take from them to humble them? I feel like there's this huge infatuation with humbling the Black community, policing the Black body, coming up with think pieces just solely on the way that we decided to wear our hair this day, right? So when I think of Black wealth, I also think of being yourself, but not only when it comes to acknowledging your narrative, but deciding whether or not you want to share it or gatekeep it. I'm not against gatekeeping. I feel like we have shared enough, willingly or unwillingly. Um, and then just being able to be yourself. When it comes down to it, when it comes to the adultification and dehumanization of the Black community, it steals so much from us. But one of the things it steals from us is the aspect of being free and being able to grow. You're telling younger kids get seen as adults way younger. So that whole joy that we talked about initially about being children, about being able to express themselves and fall in their behind and not let it be the last time they fall in their behind, that is stolen from the Black community all the time. When people discuss the disparity and the differences and comparison, because one thing I always do is I'm not over here to talk about Black people in comparison to European Americans. I'm here to give full salience to the Black narrative. That's it. But when people compare, like, oh, Black community is less open with feelings or emotions, less likely to go outside, less likely to do all these tasks. And I'm like, well, if I were in a community where I was always told that my voice was important, if I was in a community where I was always told that someone cared about what I had to say, if I was in a community where I was always told that where anywhere that I went, people are meant to protect me, why would I not feel free? What would make me not feel free? When people come up with that about feelings I'm just like, well, why would you feel safe in this community? Why would you think there's something wrong with feeling uncomfortable in a world that makes its way to make you feel uncomfortable? That's why I mentioned in that imposter syndrome thing, like, is it imposter syndrome? Which is understandable, or are you in an environment that is working every single day to make you feel like you don't belong? Why would you feel like you belong in an environment that does everything to make you feel like you don't?
Once you understand that, you can do something about it.
You can, because there's a difference between me needing to work on me and me needing to be like, it's not me, because it's the environment. So wealth is feeling like yourself, choosing how you want to share your narrative, feeling comfortable in your emotions, not feeling like they're going to be invalidated. And it's also community, because we've always had this realm of collective consciousness, because so much is important within our community because we don't get to share as much. There's this movie called Lackawanna Blues. Have you seen it?
Of course I have. Yeah.
Do you remember the end? This is the thing that always sticks with me. In the end, the voiceover, and he discusses, he's like, a lot of people talk about integration and assimilation as like a benefit of the Black community. But he said it, and I'm ad-libbing, like, not like about, like, I always think about what it also stole from us, because when we only had each other, we had our own, but he's always just like, I just always think about that. And then it shoots to this image of like the area that used to be thriving when it was the only area that Black people could be in, to a scene of it looking decrepit and like broken down and stuff like that. So I always think about that in terms of that collective conscious and that community that we had, being able to decide whether or not you want to engage with others, because always have to get the rates, but the increase in HBCU attendance, it increased like 2, 3, 4-fold.
Understandably. Of course it has.
Yeah, I feel like if we looked at the trajectory according to like with the Black Lives Matter movement and all that stuff, feeling comfortable stating that like we want to feel safe within our community.
Want to be
right?
someplace where I feel safe and loved, and where my beauty is appreciated and who I am is valued. What is next for you, Dr. Martin?
I don't know. It's so interesting that you mentioned the fact that like you seem very directed, like you know exactly what you're trying to do. I actually feel very scattered career-wise. I enjoy so many things that I am just like, if you mention Black people and helping them, oh, I'm there. But trying to streamline what I enjoy doing more. My overarching goal is just to try to find a way to create spaces and communities that make Black people feel safe, and also work with environments to help them do it. Like me creating a community and also doing an instructional design where I teach an entire university or a school. This is what you need to do to have that support. And we know that this is what the kids need because we asked them, right? So I don't know. The podcast is coming back because I feel like that would be an amazing aspect of it. I always put out content online. I do an anti-racist and anti-oppressive consultation group with clinicians in training. So that's to help them kind of delve more into therapy, because a lot of times people think when it comes to therapy, we stop training, but we don't. Once we pass We do individual and group supervision to discuss our cases. We are lifelong learners if you're doing it right. Like the more you learn, the more you're like, this has changed.
And the more you can share.
And
Yeah.
the more you can share and be receptive and be a conduit for your patients. And you never stop learning. But I'm looking to just get more streamlined on any, trying to find more ways to cultivate community for individuals of African descent, and also try to find ways to kind of spear out a little bit more. Like I've really been interested in the way that Black people are being portrayed in television. And sometimes I think that there are not enough, and clinicians, enough people in the writing room that have decided to step away from certain stereotypes, because I'll see stuff and I'm like, man, I can see the damage that this is going to do on the psyche of someone who fits this stereotype, right? So trying to find a way to cultivate community and educate others, elevate, not elevate, engage more people. I have no idea. I'm gonna enjoy it, but it's tough. It's tough when you like you. It's just like anything with Black people. I'm there, and it's like yes, but there's a lot with Black people though. So can we streamline? Absolutely not.
I think that you're, from where I sit, I think you're doing an amazing job
Thank
to
you.
actually do the thing that you set out to do, which is to help Black people and to help the Black community. I think that we need more voices and faces of women who are really up for the job of helping people to see that what is happening a lot of times is in context,
Yeah.
and not, looking at the context of what's happening, looking at what's happening on the periphery of our experiences or our pain or anxiety or sadness or hurt, and also looking for ways to pour in more joy
Yeah.
into our lives on a day-to-day basis, and not being completely inundated with negativity and the crappy things that are happening. I also really appreciate that you are an amazing, beautiful Black woman who shows up as who you are every day. You're not filtering it down. You're not, trying to make sure you're just showing up and sharing from your heart as the information hits you. I remember one day you were on your way down on an escalator,
Oh.
and you had come out of a aeronautics kind of thing or
Conference,
something,
yeah.
and you were like, I'm married, but y'all, let me tell you, you say you can't find Black men.
Listen.
Let me tell you what Black men are. So I think I just want to make sure that I don't leave or allow you to leave without letting you know how much your heart in what you're sharing is seen and appreciated. It truly, truly is, because we need it. We need to feel good. We need to know that there are sisters out there who are really true to the core of who you are and truly walk in the talk of wanting to contribute to our community in the ways that you can. So I just want to make
Thank
sure that
you.
I say that I just wanted to make sure that I said that to you
Thank you.
before we parted
I
here.
genuinely think this is what I was put on this earth to do. I love every single aspect of it. And I think that's what makes it hard to streamline, because it's like, oh, I love it all. Black, he, she, they, I'm there. Like I just want, and just trying to create that community and let people know that, you know, I think a lot of times people think social media is more aesthetic, but it's not. People just want to feel seen, and not be judged when they feel seen. I think one thing that's amazing about therapy is it really does help you, provide you with their perspective. My threshold is so high. It would just be like, you could say that you burnt some toast, or you could say that you like intricacies of trauma. And I'm just like, okay, so let's expand upon that. But I think a lot of people aren't getting that, especially Black people, and just feeling seen in that, and being shown that like you can focus on you can express your emotions, and you don't have to look perfect while doing it. I feel like that's always going to be the goal. And I really appreciate you mentioning the fact that I think a lot of people get inundated with the historical aspect. The one thing that I've been really interested in lately is Afrofuturism, because Black people are in the future too. And it's not just enough to talk about Black history. I really hope people just think more about Black futures and how they're contributing to that. And I think that's the lighthouse that kind of drives me, like, well, okay, so how does this drive us forward? If we're talking about the historical aspect, how do we expand to drive us forward to contribute to a change in our futures? Because there's nothing wrong with looking into the historical context, but are we going to reside there, or are we going to see about how we can apply this to our future generations?
Let's take that and move it forward.
Move it forward. And I think some people stay there, and it's just like, right. And um futures. So like, that's why I love working with youth. Cause I'm like, they're like, you really seem like you like teaching us. I can never teach. And I was like, well, you guys have more days ahead of you than I do. And if we need to know that the world is in good hands, we gotta do a smooth handoff, honey. That's why I'm teaching you. Y'all need to dismantle this system that is terribly broken. I need y'all to, I'm dependent on y'all. Do this right, or I'm gonna fail you in this class.
That's right.
So
That's right.
like, yeah,
That's
thank
right.
you so much.
I just want to again thank you so much for showing up today and for sharing your heart and sharing your passion and sharing your incredible information and knowledge, and also sharing with people who need to know that there are therapists out there. There are people in the mental health community who look just like you, and you are welcomed in therapy. You just have to find the person, find what resonates with you. But mental health is one of the most important things that you can give yourself and find your way into. So thank you so much, Dr. Martin, for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me and asking. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Raquel Martin. I love that you shared your thoughts on the concept of Black mental wealth, and also appreciated you unpacking the importance of identifying our personal values and understanding their impact on our life decisions. This was an important conversation. And thank you for listening to the Shaping Freedom with Lisanne Basquiat podcast. I'm Lisanne Basquiat, and I'm so grateful that you're here. You can find more information about Dr. Raquel Martin and about the important work that she's doing in the show notes. As always, please share, like, comment, and let someone know about this podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.